What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. And joining me today, we have a very special guest, but alongside him, you know him, you'll love him, Jimmy Watkins, cleveland.com columnist. And also, today on the Wine and Gold Talk podcast, we welcome a voice in basketball coverage that renders the game down to its purest form, art. Joel Lorenzi covers his hometown Chicago Bulls by approaching his craft the same way he approaches the game when he steps on the floor himself. Patience, precision, and timing that makes the whole thing feel inevitable in hindsight. His writing gives the texture, context, and human rhythms beneath the box score. That's why his work always feels like more than a recap. It feels like the music where every word and flow is with purpose. Prior to joining The Athletic, Joel spent 2 seasons chronicling the rise of the Oklahoma City Thunder for the Oklahoman, immersing himself in a franchise narrative that transitioned from promising to a champion before the nation's eyes. He's also a graduate of the University of Missouri and a West Side of Chicago native. And if you don't believe me about his writing chops, he's the recipient of the 2023 U.S. Basketball Writers Association Rising Star Award. Joel writes as he thinks, with clarity and curiosity, with respect for complexity, and with an eye for the stories that linger longer than the buzzer sounds. Now, welcome in Joel Lorenzi to the Wine and Gold Talk podcast.
Well, good God, I don't think I'll ever need another intro again. I'm just gonna record that and play it on every podcast I go moving forward. And you could tell as that went on, Jimmy was just unimpressed, dude. Jimmy's like, get this over with, bro.
You don't think that dude's head looks big enough in that window right now? Come on now.
Oh, jeez.
We don't need to do more.
I grew my hair out, that's all.
Hey, man, we appreciate you coming on. And I want to, as you mentioned, you guys got a little history there. You already josing a little bit. But before we dive into the Chicago Bulls or OKC or the Cleveland Cavaliers and all of its basketball layers, Joel and Jimmy did not meet in an NBA arena. They crossed paths in Nebraska back when Jimmy was at the Omaha World Herald and Joel was on the come up as well and grinding through those early career reps that shape how you see this industry. So I want to start there, not with the wins or the losses, but with that moment. Jimmy, what do you remember about first meeting Joel back in Omaha?
I was thinking about this today. I remember, I don't know if it was your first day or what, but we went to that restaurant where they had the Doug McDermott burger that had like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, on the corner there by the newsroom.
Had the peanut butter and jelly on it right by the newsroom. And I think
Despicable menu.
I don't know if it was that day or I think one of the first podcasts we did when Joel was covering Creighton, I was covering Nebraska basketball. Different kind of despicable. Actually, kind of turned it around. Shout out Fred. That day, we talked on that podcast about the Cavs trading for Donovan Mitchell. That was the day that happened. So there's a little serendipity for you. But I don't know. What I remember, we were both kind of skeptical of our surroundings. I mean, in particular, Joel, we didn't know. I'd been there for probably like a year or so at that time. We were both just people unfamiliar with our surroundings who looking for someone who liked the same stuff and, loved hoop, and turned out we liked the same music, and we found connection through that. I mean, and obviously the craft, right? Like when you do this job, it takes you to so many different places that you wouldn't expect. You kind of just have to follow it wherever you go. But the cool part about that, you go in there like kind of uncertain. You don't know who you're going to run into, but what you find out is that most of the people you find along the way are people who are chasing the exact same thing you do. And that is a very specific type of connection that is hard to find in the everyday is what I would say.
I don't even remember the whole Donovan trade at the time, but it actually makes sense talking about it. I mean, we tried to still keep such a connection to, the league and those games, even though it was so hard being immersed on our college beats. I mean, like when you're on a beat, that beat is your life, dude. And I remember thinking, like, that was my first job out of college covering Creighton. I was there that one season. Jimmy actually jumped ship halfway through the year or whatever it was. He didn't stay the whole season, which is fine. He had been there. He had lapped me. But I just remember thinking college basketball was like the world to me. Once you leave that job, you're like, that's like such a fragment of the world. You can't even fathom it at the time. But at the time when I was there, when you were, that was my world. That was everything, right? Like that little downtown office. I've never gone into the newsroom as much as I did when I was working that job with you. And it used to be the highlight of my week coming in to do the pod. That little studio had its Midwest office charm to it. These rotating producers. It was fun, man.
We
Just
had the
talking
basketball in
ball.
there. We would just be dribbling around the office.
Literally just dribbling around the office. Like you can argue that was as pure as this game was for me, was that job. Just I mean, I was a kid for real, dude. Like it was an innocence to it that we would just come in and talk hoop. It was super dope. And then like you said, like the unfamiliarity, like being in Nebraska, like a lot of nights I was staring out my window feeling like Bruce Wayne or something, like I'm waiting on the next gig to show up. A lot of times we were like plotting our way out because we were dream chasers, right? So we're like, how are we gonna turn this? Who's even reading? How are we gonna turn this into careers? And you did it before me, and I mean, it's just crazy. Like look at where we are now. That was only what 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Like it's crazy to look at how the time passed.
Yeah, I want to shout out Sam McEwen. He's a good boss.
Shout out Sam
He
McEwen,
asked a
man. He's
lot of
still
us.
doing
He
the
asked a
damn
lot of
thing.
us. I know. He asked a lot of us, but I remember still to this day. Sometimes I feel like first of all he's a columnist over there. He's writing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's also the sports editor, and we would have like me, Joel, and him would have like 3-way editing sessions in the newsroom, the likes of which that I don't think I've experienced before or since.
No.
He really went line by line with us, so he definitely made us better. I do want to just address one grievance that I have with Joel before
Oh
we get
boy.
really started, and that is the belt that I lent you over the summer when
I knew he was
when
gonna
you
bring it
came
up.
through for NAPJ.
I was in the airport this morning when I landed, and I realized, damn, I forgot to pack a belt. And not only did I forget to pack my usual black belt, for months I have not been able to find the brown belt that you
I said
loaned
goodbye
me.
to it when let me set the stage for you actually, because it's kind of crazy. So Joel's coming through Cleveland. I had texted him like the week before, like, hey, like let me know what you're doing. We'll try to catch up if it's
Yeah,
possible. And what he ends up doing, he texted me either the night before or the morning of, like, hey, I need a belt. You got a belt? And I was like, yeah, I
definitely
got a
the
belt.
morning
He's like,
of.
what kind of belt? He asked me to send a picture of this belt. I was like, if you need a belt, you're just getting a belt. You're getting what I got. I gave him what I had.
Well, I didn't want a cowboy belt or something. Knowing you, I don't know what you got in your
It
closet,
was
bro.
enough. It was enough. You know me better than to know I own a cowboy belt. He didn't even come up to my door. He pulls up in a white minivan Uber, and it's like an action movie scene where I'm like tossing him a gun across
This
the
is the
highway.
handoff,
Except
man. Yep.
it literally just this sliding door slid open. He reached out for the belt. I gave him the belt. I never saw it again. I never will.
That's how we work, man.
Never will is crazy. And I want to get into Joel. You mentioned Nebraska being unfamiliar and just being the start of your career. When you think back to those Nebraska days now, how much of that version of yourself still shows up in the way you approach the job?
Well, I think I've grown so much. Honestly, like I remember like being at Mizzou. I started writing my senior year, and I remember like not even knowing what a feature was. And then when I was in Nebraska, like by the end of my first season, I'm like, I thought I knew what a feature was, and I thought I had a formula, and I realized soon after there is no formula, and there's so much writing and so many different approaches to the craft out there. I'm still trying to find the way of profiling, and a lot of it's access, obviously, right, which is like scarce these days compared to the people we looked up to and read growing up. But I think the things that remain true of who I was in Nebraska was like the innocence I still see in the craft. Like this is my livelihood, which I don't think it is for everybody. Like I think a lot of people see it as work, or for a lot of people it's a hobby. This is my livelihood. Like I really enjoy being a writer and storytelling and carrying that torch. Whereas, so much of the coverage is diverted from that. So just the craftsmanship, I haven't lost my innocence there. Maybe you could call it being naive. I don't know. Maybe I haven't had that truth scare to throw me off the path. But it's at my core, I think it's who I am as a writer. I don't think I'll shake that. The day I have to probably shake that is the day I'll probably walk away from the game. So the essence of who I was as a writer or at least try to be. And Nebraska is those are the same principles I try to keep now.
And I think it's interesting you talk about the love of the game, right? You
Yeah,
cannot have more love for the game than being in the arena you grew up watching, right? Now you're
yeah.
at your hometown covering the Bulls. Can you just explain what that's like, how that feels, and what it means to you to be in that situation so early on into your career?
It's weird for me for sure for multiple reasons. I think one, I grew up probably going to more Bucks games than Bulls games just because the Bulls kind of outprice regular folks. I remember I started going to Bucks games when I was like 13, and that was the year they drafted Giannis. And it was just so much easier to pay $50 for my dad to get in the building. That was when they were at BMO Harris, their old place, and actually see a star in the making. And then I grew up like a Laker fan too, more than anything. I was a Kobe guy, so but like I was always I mean, you from Chicago, the teams there they keep the city alive or barely alive, depending on how they're doing. And so, like I always kept up with the Bulls, and for most of my life it's been a miserable experience. I didn't grow up in the Jordan era, right? Like I was born after that. And so everything I know about the Bulls besides the blip that the D Rose era was has mostly been black. And so just to see that up close now and have to be objective about it, I should say get to be objective about it. It's fascinating, man. Especially I'd say the other layer of it is coming from OKC the last 2 years and seeing how that franchise is run, and then coming here, watching the Bulls operation up close. You're like, again, it's levels to this, and you can sort of feel how jaded the city is. Like if I never felt it this much before, I definitely feel it now being in the building every night.
Why leave a dynasty? Life is bigger than your
Yeah,
livelihood, but why leave what you knew? I know you know enough ball to know that thing is
yeah,
heading upward and upward and upward to cover whatever's happening with this Bulls team.
yeah, man. It's a loaded question, and you're right. Like at the end of the day, like I'd say my livelihood was a big part of it. Like it's like there were drawbacks like anything. Like if I had to draw the Venn diagram out right now, like I would say, as cool as it was to be linked as the only traveling writer for this budding dynasty and the unique opportunity that is, I always felt like the eyes weren't there. And maybe that's just a nationwide thing with OKC. Maybe that team has yet to draw the metrics they should. I think a lot of people, networks, fans, publications have just been a step behind on what they are, like continuously. So maybe that's part of it, but I always felt like, hey, I think I'll be cooking. I want to reach more people, And at my Gannett paper, it was kind of an issue. I liked my team, my coworkers, my editors, but I kind of felt like so much of the job and me improving, which this is such a vulnerable stage for me in my career in terms of formative experiences, who I surround myself with, who my resources are. And I just felt like, the athletic was always the dream. It was less about what I had going on at OKC and more about what I thought this could be, right? And so the athletic was a place I dreamed to work at since I was in school. And my teammates now are Marcus Thompson, David Aldridge, Miran Fader. Like we got a squad. Like that Sam Amick. Like that's scratching the surface. And so I just wanted to surround myself with people I thought could force me to be better every single day, and I could lean on, and people who are legends in this game, and then get to a place where owned by the New York Times, who I thought could elevate my readership. Big market, obviously. The idea is to have more eyes, and I think I do I've started out with a solid readership. Obviously, it's a slow burn with a team that's bad, but I was willing to go through that to be back home and to make more money and probably grow as a reporter. But I think about OKC all the time. Like I think about what I left. Like that wasn't easy. Like you got to be a real sicko in terms of considering your career and loving basketball. I think to be like, I want to make this much less money to cover this team. And I thought about it because they are historically great, and I genuinely enjoyed being around that team, and I felt like I left meat on the bone. I felt like I left stories on the table. So that I think about it all the time for sure.
Joel, you talked about like organizationally, it's different from OKC and Chicago, and obviously
Yeah.
Cleveland's different as well. But every team learns from itself. We know this is a copycat league. And when you talk about learning lessons from across the league, what do you think the NBA team should be studying from OKC? Because it seems like they're a tier above everybody else right now, not only on the floor, but organizationally as well. And what would it be about how that organization carries itself, or even how the players carry themselves? Because we've seen they have like the garden wall with interviews. We've seen how Shea conducts himself in interviews. Is it player based or is it top down when it comes to that organization?
It's top down, but it's a trickle effect. So much of what you see across the organization is like a directive of Sam Presti. Like this is sort of the culture he's built. I could go so many different directions here, but I think a lot of what teams should be mimicking is the sort of farm system they've created. I mean, pretty much everybody you see in the building who has a hand in their success was groomed there. Like they're not plucking people from LA or this and that. Like they've groomed everybody. And this is why you look down their bench and they don't have like billboard names for assistants, say for maybe like Chip England, who was part of those historic Spurs teams, but like Spurs culture is what Sam deals in. Like he came from that. He was in the video room back in the day and then an assistant GM. Like he worked his way through the Spurs ranks. So that was a given. These guys they groom their rotational players through the G League team and through those tanky years. Like think of how many unsigned guys they have on the roster who went undrafted, I should say, or were on two ways. AJ Mitchell has punched people in the mouth and come out of nowhere, and he's on his long list of Aaron Wiggins was 55th pick, Lou Dort, undrafted. I mean, they conjure these guys up and groom them because this is their culture. They made such a asset out of the G League team and the experimentation there in the farm system. Mark Daignault groomed from the G League team. They constantly send guys down there to be head coach every couple years to groom them for the bench. It's just so calculated all around. They don't leave any stone unturned as far as assets and what they can use from their resources because they have to. Like this is Oklahoma City, man. Steph Curry ain't signing there in the summer. Giannis ain't signing there in the summer. They know what their resources are. They know the reality, and that's why when they were being called black eye of the league, like they knew they had to take that route. And the basketball guys gave them some fortune. They got lucky to see Shea become this unbelievable, one of the best scorers probably ever. They never thought he would fill this potential, but then you get lucky and get to draft Chet. You hit on Jalen Williams. Like they just done everything right, man, and they knew who they were and their resources, and it's not even low key remarkable. It's remarkable how they come back from the way KD did them and the assets he left them. It's Sam and everything else is directed from him. It's a trickle down effect. The culture he's built, and it's far more calculated than I think anybody across the league can imagine. I mean, it's hard to replicate. A lot of teams maybe don't have to because they're in bigger markets, but he recognized the tools he had, and he is a true sicko. He made it work.
I think the Cavs are trying, right? Like you see the way they're managing it's impossible, but everyone's trying. You see the way that they're managing their farm system, the way they're pulling guys like Sam Merrill, Dean Wade out of that pretty consistent. They're making low risk bets. The main difference between the Cavs and the Thunder to me is that the Thunder got their superstar and all the draft picks at once, and the Cavs had to give up all their draft picks to get the superstar.
Yeah.
So that never happens.
And that's part of the luck.
That's part of the luck, but it's also, I mean, like acquiring Paul George and the way they managed Paul George, the way they played up the Paul George and Kawhi. You're not just trading for Paul George, LA Clippers. You're trading for Paul George and Kawhi, and your price should reflect that. I mean, giving assist to Steve Ballmer for being overzealous on that type of thing. But now that they're fully formed, I think the Cavs can't be thinking this big right now. They need to figure out how to get back on defense first before we start talking big picture stuff. But for the fan base here, if for people across the league, one of the questions that I'm thinking watching this team is like, why should anyone try? Like for the Thunder, you watch the Thunder and all the other teams around the league, I'm just like, what's the point? Like legit, like the Giannis market right now is being suppressed. Giannis, top 5 player in the NBA. Teams are like, I don't know if I want to give my assets up for that guy because even if we get that guy, I'm not sure we could compete with them. Have we reached NBA nihilism already with this team that is NBA champions, now look even better? Chet's making a huge leap. They haven't even had their lineups together. And oh, by the way, they might have a top 5 pick next year.
Right. Yeah. I would be remiss to not mention it. I'm glad you brought it up. It's the foresight and understanding this CBA. I mean, by the time the next CBA comes around and maybe there's enough seismic changes to maybe the Thunder might have to pivot in their strengths, which I don't see that really happening. Like, I imagine the Thunder will have already done the league some damage by the time that comes around. But their understanding of this current CBA and the importance of draft picks as assets and their use of second rounders is why they're ahead. It's tough for anybody to stand a chance because, like, some of the people at my place, Sam and McNaley, have made good points in that when you've seen previous dynasties, most recently the Warriors, there was always at least a team that threatened to foil them. And teams had the urgency to, oh, well, let's make this move to try to not pantomime the Warriors, but like have a respectable response. And it's hard to do that right now. Like, I think the Spurs got a really good chance. I mean, you saw, I don't want to overreact to the Cup, but they got a good young core, man. And they got a dude who's probably going to be the best player in the world sooner than later, if not just top 3, which is the type of guy, the dominoes fall right. Those are the guys who lead you to the promised land. If the Spurs are the real lone competitor, the most realistic competitor, it's going to take probably some more draft luck from them or some more luck to fall in their favor with the way this core continues to grow. How high is the Steph Castle ceiling? How high is the Dylan Harper ceiling? The kind of luck and development that you saw, with Shea. I mean, Shea has like one of one career trajectory and development with how that dude develop. You're going to need that type of luck if you're the Spurs. And everybody else just has to pray because anybody else who's dealing for Giannis is giving up like an ungodly package, right? It like almost puts you on the fence of like, are you going to be able to compete in the interim? And you're definitely not going to be able to compete in the long run with that kind of assets, Milwaukee's going to ask for, I imagine. So it's just going to take luck. And part of that is like, can the Thunder stay healthy? Because the injuries are the only thing standing in the way, right? Like half of Chet's career has been bogged down by injuries. Like, is that going to continue? I'm not sure it will. God forbid these things happen, but they're probably the only solutions to teams trying to rival them right now. I mean, if you want to nitpick, the Thunder's biggest thing right now is like the decisions they'll have to make fiscally, which I doubt they're worried about. They got the draft picks to keep cycling guys in of these different modes, at a Case and Wallace mode. Lou Dort, they're going to have to make a decision on him pretty soon. And they have 2 guys of his mode who are better and on the team already, probably, in Case and Wallace. And Alex Caruso, Hardenstein, they have to make that decision. I think they should bring him back because he's wildly important to what? That's a crazy response. Hardenstein is wildly important to what Shea does, I think. But they also have the rookie who hasn't played yet, Thomas Sorber. He's supposed to be of that ilk. So they can keep drafting and throwing darts at the board to see who sticks and who can be sort of part of this equation. They probably are due for like another ball handler. It would be absurd if they lucked into a top 2 pick and got Darren Peterson or something. I mean, these are things we're talking about, dude. Like, it's insane where they are and this sort of catastrophe they've set the league up for.
I love Hart. I just think that once Chet gets to where he needs to go, then you can get a lot of what they get from Hartenstein. Not a lot, but a chunk of what they get from Hartenstein for a lot less money.
Now we're getting to the conversation of the Cavs. Like, if Evan Mobley beefs up and gets to where he's going to need, do the Cavs need Jared Allen? And I think we're kind of having the same.
Except one team is trying to figure out how to get past the second round, and the other team is like 3-peat, 4-peat. Where does this thing end? Like, when do we have to? How many championships can we win before we need to make those decisions?
I mean, I'm not comparing.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just drawing the divide because it's like, yes, this is where the Cavs are financially too. This is where the comparison, because the Cavs are definitely aspiring to be OKC East right now. But it's like the comparison absolutely falls apart immediately when you think your roster is more expensive than theirs, and yet you haven't accomplished. You're still where OKC was 2 years ago, second round exit. And by the way, OKC figured that out in 1 year.
Yeah. And so this is what I'll say on Hardenstein in either front court, and maybe there's a through line to draw here. I think Hardenstein is wildly important to. He's the best screener Shea's ever had, bar none. No one comes close. Shea, for as much, it seems like he's taken another leap. I mean, he's as efficient from 3 as he's ever been. That being said, when you get in these playoff scenarios, which is really what they're preparing for, you need to give him as many tools in the toolbox as possible. As great as he is as an ISO guy, we've seen teams aggressively take the ball out of his hands or put a guy at the nail who's trying to thwart him or have box defenses to try. Teams have thrown the work to him. And I think Hart is important for two reasons. And he's his best screener, like I said, so you're giving them different driving angles. And Lord knows Shea only needs so much of a sliver of a window to really kill you. And two, Hartenstein is their best pocket passer they have. When Shea has to get off the ball and put somebody in short roll or whatever, nobody's better than Hartenstein. Hartenstein is such a cerebral passer at that size. Just a great fit with Shea. And then I think with where the league is, not even where it's headed, where it is, so many of these teams run double big. You need the lineup versatility to go single big with Chet, to go single big with Hart, to go double big with both, to have a third big. You need these two. I don't know if I can draw an exact through line to Cleveland, but I think you probably need two players of both Mobley and Jared Allen's ilk. Now, the idea, and this is people's problem with Evan Mobley, is that the scoring leap should be better, right? Like, in theory, he should be a better scorer by now. That's the only way in the aggregate, because Donovan Mitchell is not Shea. Like, there's a gap there as far as the way defenses need to treat them probably, and the volatility and what you could do as a defense and whatever. I mean, I don't have to speak to that too much. There's a gap. And so where do you get that scoring in the aggregate? And it should be probably Mobley by now, but Jared, obviously, you need as a sort of lob threat and vertical spacer. And Mobley should be more consistent from range by now. He should have more tools in the toolbox. People have real beef with him as a scorer and his potential there and why he hasn't realized it. That being said, assuming he does get there, I still think you need a lob threat next to him just for the sake of lineup versatility. But it is I do see the issue here where Mobley should be a better scorer by now.
And you talked about it there, Joel, right? Jared Allen is bar none the best screener on the Cavs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he also has the strength that Evan Mobley simply doesn't, the size that Evan Mobley simply doesn't. When we're talking about physicality and weight and class and all these different things, that's kind of where we're talking about. And the through line there is you talking about that this version of the NBA, multiple different teams are running too big. That started with Cleveland. That started when J.B. Bickerstaff was utilizing Evan, Jared Allen, Lowry Markkanen was in that group as well.
Yep.
And I think you now see that across the league where different teams are utilizing this different variants. And you can also go to small ball lineups with that skinny four that can also play the five in different lineups. Then you have the solo big five with Jared Allen. Obviously, the Cavs haven't utilized that as much as they might have wanted to, especially when we look at the fourth quarter. But that's neither here nor there at this point.
The other big difference between the Thunder's two big setup and the Cavs do big set, Thunder are still susceptible at times to offensive rebounding, but like one of the main selling points of playing two bigs is supposed to be that you control the glass, and the Cavs just haven't done that really at any point during the marriage of Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I think Hartenstein is a much better version, much better fit of what the Cavs have wanted consistently from Jared Allen. He's that bulk, he's that muscle, right? Whereas Jared Allen can be energetic and active and all these different things, but he's another skinny guy sometimes. You know what I mean?
And while we're trying to make the parallels, it does not help that Darius Garland has seemingly taken a step back. I mean, the Thunder's second best ball handler, and there are people who have gripes with Jalen Williams being their second best ball handler, right? Because you get to nitpick when you're a dynasty, and if this team is gonna win 74 games or, threaten the legacy of the Warriors or the 90s Bulls, this is the nitpicking you do. That being said, Jalen Williams is a far superior player than Darius Garland. Obviously, different modes of players, different archetypes. Jalen Williams is a versatile defender. He's a real wing. He scales up. He scales down. Darius Garland, when it felt like the Cavs had real momentum to be an East contender, was a great floor general, bursty guard, could create his own shot, can do all these things, was a good facilitator, was genuinely helpful next to Donovan Mitchell. And we all know the underlying, well, hey, you probably got to hide these guys to a degree. You got to scheme around them as defenders. There was a time when that felt like it mattered less. And now that you're seeing these drawbacks with Darius Garland as an offensive player, that he's not realizing his potential as an offensive player, it's just even more problematic to sort of draw the faulty parallels there.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it there. Jalen Williams is a two-way player. Darius Garland is an offensive player when he's successful. And that's basically it. right there. Like if Darius Garland isn't playing to an all-star caliber offensively, he's a liability on both ends of the floor, and you can't rely on him in any kind of capacity. Jalen Williams, if he's not having the best offensive game, defensively, as you mentioned, he can scale up, scale down. He can be a small ball 5 in cases, which I still think is so nutty. But
It's absurd.
I want to talk about the identities of these different teams. Obviously, we haven't talked about the Chicago Bulls as much as I thought we were going to on today's podcast, but
It's very hard to talk about them.
Where is Josh Giddey on the Darius Garland, Jalen
Don't
Williams?
ask. Next question.
let's get to the identity or the lack thereof of my identity for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and also the identity of the Chicago Bulls, who, even if Joel and Jimmy and all of us can admit it's hard to talk about this team, even in losses, they still have an identity on the offensive end at least. They still like to run. They're still the second fastest team, second most
Sure.
pace-heavy team, and that was so poorly executed in the transition defense by the Cavs that they lost on Wednesday. The Cavs, again, do not have an identity. OKC has this defense-first mentality, this defense-first identity. Cavs like to say that they have that. They don't have that anymore. That's not actually a thing. When you look at these different teams, Joel, and you've been around organizations now that have leaned into who they are and then teams that are still trying to figure it out, how important is it for teams to have a foundational identity they can fall back on, especially when injuries and inconsistency continue to hit throughout the league?
Yeah, it's important, but it's also harder to achieve than we make it sound, I think. To craft and curate an identity is a slow burn, man. For OKC, it took instilling the habits, 2 20-win seasons, bringing in the defenders that mattered, the personnel that could play to that identity, coaching up the guys who were not necessarily defenders to begin with, and then putting a scheme around like Shea so where he can be like the league's most high-profile free safety instead of chasing the ball all the time. Like, it takes so many things to go right, and the Bulls came into the season saying, well, obviously they pivoted last year offensively. Like, they wanted to become this higher-paced team. They got rid of their ISO-driven stars and wanted this egalitarian offense that would run teams into the ground. They figured that out. Cool. They came into the season saying, okay, we're going to build a defense. I don't know if arrogance is the right word, but it's ballsy to come into the season and say, well, okay, we're going to craft a defense. We're going to start working toward a defensive identity. Let's take the exact team that we saw go 15-5 to end last year and simply add Isaac Okoro to that. It's a bit ballsy. Now, granted, he's been probably their best defender. Like, I know the numbers don't favor him. He clearly makes a difference when he shows up. I mean, he's the guy taking all the tough assignments, whereas if it's not him, it has to be like Trey Jones, who's been in and out of the lineup, and he's a good player, but you're asking a lot of him at his size if he has to pick up all these perimeter assignments. And then Modest Buzelis, that was the issue last year, was that, I mean, he wants to be held to this higher defensive standard. He has not warranted the expectations of an all-defense guy like he commanded in the preseason. But also, it's a lot to ask him to be chasing guys around, or even most of his assignments this year have been the Evan Mobleys, the Paulo Bancheros, and he just cannot exact his physicality into the game. So Isaac Okoro's had to be like this Superman, scale up, scale down, like Alex Caruso used to. Like, some players that are like out of his tier, he's being asked to do the things they do. I mean, he's going from guarding everybody from Tyrese Maxey to Lauri Markkanen, which is like a crazy palette of assignments. And so I just think it was ballsy coming into the season saying, well, we're going to build a defense. Let's start by adding this one guy. It's hard to craft an identity, man. And even with the Bulls' identity, this, if you want to say they're an offensive leaning team, because that's probably what you need to be building around Josh Giddey. They're fast. They do these things. Like, they still don't get up that many threes. They care about the looks they get, but they don't get up that many threes, which is usually synonymous with this sort of high pace offense stuff. And then I think they need so many guys with the roster they have. They need so many guys to be healthy and clicking and playing average or better than average to stand a chance, which is what I thought you saw in the first 5 games this year when they went 5-0 and stunned the NBA and caught them off guard. And then what maybe happened last night. Granted, the Cavs have injuries. There seems to be a lot of dysfunction from afar right now. That helps. But I don't know. It's been hard for the Bulls to upkeep even their offensive identity because they just need so much to go right with the way this team is built.
I would say ambitious. is the word when you just add Isaac Okoro to the mix and say we fixed it. Who's protecting the rim? Nikola Vucevic. Isaac Okoro will fix it. Isaac Okoro will fix it. I also find that to be a funny. We're gonna run up and down the court. Who's your center? Nikola Vucevic. He's a great trailer. He's actually Nikola
Yes.
Vucevic's greatest skill as a slow big man is that it is harder for teams to find him as a trailer, as the Cavs struggled to do mightily last night because the offense is moving so fast. People are looking behind him going, oh, he'll never get here. Then he does, and he's open up top. He's open up top for three. On that point, though, I mean, you saw these teams have played twice so far, right? Twice in the regular season. I mean, last night I was watching back. I watched every Bulls basket today, again, and it was just, to me, the main culprit is yes, Evan Mobley being out, bad thing for your defense. Max Strus as a tone setter, not as a stopper, but as a tone setter, as an accountability guy, culture guy. Not great to have him missing. A lot of new faces out there. I just see a team, like you said, a lot of things need to go right for the Bulls offense to work. I see a team that was willing to do all those things. I see a team that had bad body language after misses and turnovers. I see a team that is ball watching when Isaac Okoro is making smart cuts off the ball. I see a team that, to our conversation right now, lacks an identity. So we're in the weeds here, Joel. Your perspective from the outside, kind of 1,000-foot view, what do you think the Cavs are trying to do as a basketball team, and why aren't they doing it?
Yeah, loaded question that I don't know if I'm the best to answer. Like I said, playing to identity is harder than it seems, especially because like the identity that has served the Cavs well only got them so far. Like at a certain point, their personnel is what it is, and I thought, with the right breaks, they could make a conference finals. When healthy, they're a great regular season machine. But there are just certain limitations. Again, with Donovan Mitchell, there's just, as far as their playoff aspirations, there are just better series-changing players across the board in both conferences. Better playoff picture altering players. And so it makes it so, in my opinion, you really have to play to your identity. I think personnel and identity are in direct connection. Whereas, like, if your personnel is worse off, and you're trying to, not, like, the Cavs are in such a different ballpark than the Bulls, where the Bulls are building around Josh Giddey right now, and they're egalitarian. Like, the Cavs have stars to cling to. That being said, if your stars are Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley instead of Shea and Chet, or Wemby and, I want to be careful here, De'Aaron Fox or whoever. I mean, they have a fascinating core in San Antonio. When that's the case, I think there's a bigger margin for error for the teams with better ceiling raisers as far as sticking to your identity. And the Cavs, there's just been inconsistency in terms of sticking to their identity from where I sit. You look at a team like the Thunder, who's supposed to be, Cavs West, I guess. You look at a team like them, they missed Jalen Williams for basically all the season up until last week. They're down guys who are in and out of their rotations. Shea might sit for rest. Lou Dort might miss games. Isaiah Hartenstein has missed games. Caruso has missed games. But I think you see them play to their identity. They're just a great team, first of all. With their system and their staff and the way that things run in the building, and this is a tough ask for Cleveland, but they have guys 1 through 15. They have a system where 12 through 15 on a given night could come in the game and give them minutes that fit the system, like system beneficial minutes. Like Kenrich Williams could not play for 3 games, come in a game, and play exactly to the system and the way they need. Brandon Carlson, their Mormon, like, 4th string center who never plays, can come in, stretch the floor, do whatever they need, block shots, and look like he plays every night. It's levels to this, man. And when you're a great team and you have Shea and Chet and these guys, there's a bigger margin for error. That being said, even their rotational guys down the bench play better to the system. And I think it's a tough ask for contenders league-wide to have something like that, such a fluid system that you ask your 15 man to come in and play. We could boil this down to consistency of sticking to your identity. And the margin for error, especially now, is just smaller for Cleveland than it's been. And part of that, going back to the Evan Mobley stuff, he should be a better player by now. The margin for error would be bigger. if he was.
He was supposed to be the ceiling raiser. Donovan was a caretaker of the franchise until Evan Mobley was ready. Kenny's main job as a coach, Kenny Atkinson's main job as a coach has been get him there. And we saw flashes. Last year it was Evan Mobley being enabled more often by Darius, Garland, and Donovan Mitchell, and show us what you can do when these guys gear their elite skill sets towards setting you up a little bit more. And we make things life a little bit easier for you on offense. Maybe give you a few more reps to do those things. This year, I think they were kind of hoping cuffs are off. Like what if you're the guy now? And they gave it a very short window, and I think the answer was very quickly, he's not ready for this. And the thing I keep coming, I mean, we're so far past this now. This thing, the water is so contaminated with this team. Like, Cavs can't even get themselves to play hard right now. But like, just if we're looking big picture, like what was supposed to happen and what's happening and what happened instead, I still feel like they pulled those reins back from him a little quickly. I've been asking on this very pod for 2 years, like, okay, it's very nice to say all these things about Evan Mobley as a potential MVP candidate, and he takes us to where we're supposed to go. He's the key that unlocks everything. But like, along that path, there are going to be some ugly growing pains. So what is your appetite for inefficient Evan Mobley possessions? What is your appetite for Evan Mobley struggling through the decision-making tree that comes with being a heightened part of an offense, of moving up on a scouting report, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't handle it well to start the season. I thought his answer was too often. You can say, Joel, that he should be hitting more of these threes, and that's true. He showed us a little bit of that last year, but like, answer too often was, I have a pull-up three that the defense is more than willing to give me. I'm going to take that. And you want to see that part of their correction of that has been getting him closer to the basket. The path they're on right now, we talked about this last week, Ethan, like, they're trying to get Evan Mobley back to where he was last year. Now, 30 games into the season, and Kenny was saying at practice last week, he was almost there. Well, we thought by 30 games in the season, we'd be having, like, is he sixth in the MVP conference? Like, this, where this thing was aimed and where it ended up is so disorienting. Obviously, now he's injured, so that'll be another, reset point for him. We'll see we'll see what happens in the interim, and we'll see how they try to steady him when he gets back. That's the real center of this whole thing. Like, Evan Mobley has been asked to grow up a little bit faster than the Thunder have needed Chet to grow up. And that's in part because Shea is Shea and Donovan's not quite Shea. And that is what it is. But that's what the money's for. Like, you got to figure it out.
Like, Mobley should be, I have no other way to articulate this. By now, in the Cavs' idyllic world, Mobley should have been a 94 overall by now instead of an 87 or 86. Like, that's just what it should have been. And that would have made this thing work and made the margin for error bigger, and it's just not.
And I think when we talk about identity, right, and I want to wrap this point up here, this section of the podcast up here, Kenny Atkinson came in, was hired for this job to replace J.B. Bickerstaff because he was some offensive wizard. He had more adjustments, more schematic principles that he was going to put in place that was going to make this offense sing. He did that in year one, right? This was a historic regular season offense for the first season here. Now, without some of the shooters and without Max Strus and Sam Merrill, obviously personnel is huge, but you also look at how much he's focused on the defensive end of the floor, making adjustments at the point of attack, making adjustments with how they are trying to commit turnovers, getting away from allowing the defense to funnel to Jared Allen or Evan Mobley. And you're seeing less of the offensive creation that made them so great. The ATOs have regressed. They're not as crisp. They're not as good as they were last year. You've seen that the system that has been set up for Darius, Garland, and Donovan Mitchell. Oh, Darius is back in the game. We're now going to get more drives than we have all season. When Darius is not there, what happens? How can we create more offense from the free throw line extended, from the dunker spot, from the painted area, all these different things? And I think Kenny Atkinson needs to focus more on what made him great, what got him this job, which was the offensive end of the floor. And that's something that this Cavs team is relying on him to help them be put in the best scenarios to succeed, no matter who's on the floor and what lineup variations he's putting them in. And this kind of gets into my next question to you, Joel, when it comes to accountability and that not necessarily being an option, right? We talk about Billy Donovan, who has called out the Chicago Bulls on multiple different occasions at
Yeah.
press conferences this season. And obviously Mark Daigneault not having to do that, but also just simply having that standard for them in practices and different conversations. How necessary is that kind of discomfort for growth? And what do you think it would take for the Cavs to clean up issues like transition defense and shot selection that teams like the Bulls are exploiting?
I think it's very necessary. While you need a level of delusion to win, you can't be overcome by delusion in what you have in the building. Like you need to know what it takes for you to win games. And I think the Bulls maybe underestimated just how much would need to go right on a nightly basis for them to win games. And they saw that during this nasty stretch before this past week where they lost to like 6 or 7 lottery teams. Like just as nasty of a stretch as you can play of hoop. It takes that clarity. And, I can't speak to Billy's exact motives beyond putting things in perspective with us. But look, I don't think Billy was wrong in saying, he's been quoted multiple times saying that, hey, people want to say we lost to lottery teams, but, we're not so different from a New Orleans or Indian in that so much has to go right for us to win games, which is a nasty quote. It sounds nasty, and Bulls fans are trying to, rip their ears off when they hear that, but he's not entirely wrong. So much has to go right for these Bulls to win games, as evidenced by giving New Orleans 2 of their 5 wins this season. Losing to Indy twice in a week and a half span. Losing to Brooklyn, dude, the night they lost to Brooklyn, Brooklyn's in the hallway cheering, let's make it 3 in a row. If that's not sobering as far as perspective, I don't know what is. So you need Billy Donovan to come in there. Still, coaching is a lot of delusion too. You have to coach up guys even if the results aren't matching the belief, right? And I think Billy, for what it's worthwhile, he's maybe, you can argue he's mismanaged Modest Buzelis and his second year growth, and he's mismanaged lineups, and he's played Vooch too much or at the wrong times, and it took him too long to play double big lineups. Some of that was injuries, blah, blah, blah. You can probably make a list of the things Billy Donovan is maybe mismanaged. That being said, he's never been wrong about what this team is and has to do to win, and that level of clarity is necessary now. I don't know how it relates to the Cavs. It's also different when you're dealing with superstars because there's ego involved in that. There's ego involved in how you coach a Donovan Mitchell, how you coach from afar. Evan Mobley seems kind of more like a fragile ego to deal with than a Kevin Durant. That I know Kevin Durant's a big tweeter, but you tell Kevin Durant what it is, he knows what it is. You tell Draymond Green what it is, he can tell you what it is. Evan Mobley is a scene like that type. You got to coach guys differently according to ego. It's an ego league. These egos sometimes run these franchises, so it's a tough balance. I don't know how it has to work in Cleveland's facilities, but it is a tough dance, man. But clarity is a necessary tool for sure.
You nailed it. Billy Donovan gets to say those things because Billy Donovan's coach, Josh Giddey, who still has a lot more to prove in this league. And yeah, he's paid. He's making $25 million a year, whatever it is. And Vooch has been around the block, but Buzelis could end up being an all-star. But young teams, you just have more carte blanche to treat them that way. Kenny said something. I'm trying to remember before. I'm not going to remember the exact game, but I think it was before during a pregame. He said something about how he had some. I don't even remember which star it was. But he had a conversation with one of the star players on this team, and he felt like he could yell at them. Or, this is the key part, as much as you can yell at a star in the NBA, right? This is the dominant culture in the league right now. Players have the power. The number one most powerful person, the Cavs organization, is still probably Dan Gilbert. Donovan Mitchell gives him a run for his money. Evan Mobley ain't far behind. His power is wielded quietly, but everyone in the organization knows, Kobe Altman knows, Kenny Atkinson knows, that guy right there, the tall, quiet kid, is our meal ticket. So we have to be very careful with the way we manage him, with the way we motivate him, with the way we call him out sometimes. I've been talking about this for a year now at least. The way they talk about Evan Mobley to us does not match the player they want him to be. If you think Evan Mobley can become a 1A, 1B type killer player, I would think part of that process is dangling that carrot and trying to light a fire under him. Because right now it's not there. he plays like his personality, and this basketball. Steve Kerr has said, like, you can learn a lot about who somebody is by the way they play basketball. Evan Mobley plays basketball quiet and reserved. He's very comfortable letting Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland run the offense because they're older than him. They're more established. That's understandable. That's a part of this dynamic too. But you're supposed to be the guy now. You're supposed to be the guy now. And I feel like the Cavs are often tiptoeing around him when he has these weird games where he disappears in the second half. Whether it's because Donovan Mitchell is not giving him the ball, or Darius Garland's not giving him the ball, or Kenny always says, I need to put him in better positions, or he just needs to go get the ball, or he needs to speak up, or he needs to demonstrate to Donovan Mitchell that if you give me the ball, I am capable of carrying this offense, right? Like that's part of this equation too. But again, we're so far removed, because I actually think that Kenny could really take a page out of Billy Donovan's book right now and say, hey, remember that whole film session of truth we had last week where we were talking about accountability and all of the lazy mistakes we exposed, and how you guys were saying that it's going to be different after the NBA Cup break? Well, since that point, our defense has been getting run up by the Washington Wizards, the Charlotte Hornets, and the Chicago Bulls. And I don't know if you guys checked the standings recently. We're the frickin' play-in. So until we start, obviously the talent is here. Obviously the Cavs are a better constructed roster than some of these teams that they're playing against. But somebody needs to say something or do something, or the players, this is another part of it. There's only so many different ways Kenny can deliver the message before the players decide to hear it. And some motivation has to be internal. You just have to decide to go sometimes. But something needs to change drastically. And it seems like such a little thing when we're talking about transition defense and taking care of the basketball. Out of a made basket last night, the Bulls are throwing an outlet pass over their head for a layup, man. Like, this is elementary stuff, and it seems like such a simple fix. Maybe you need to shake somebody for those adjustments to get made, because we are a third of the way into the season, and it's starting to look scary. Like, again, injuries. I don't care about the injuries anymore. We said this earlier in the league. It's Cavs versus Cavs right now, and the Cavs are freaking losing.
Yeah, Jimmy, and just to give some clarity to our Cavs listeners about the conversation you were talking about that was being had, it was during the 76ers game on November 5th, where Kenny ripped them at halftime. And the quote that he said is, I ripped them as much as you can rip anybody in the NBA. There's levels to this.
Rip them some more.
Yeah, I think we're trying to understand where this Cavs team can grow in that capacity. Donovan Mitchell is frustrated. Kenny Atkinson is frustrated. The entire organization is frustrated, but how they choose to go about handling it is still up in the air. But I got two more questions for Joel before we get out of here. Both of them are tied back to OKC because, of course, they are the talk of the town. After seeing a championship up close, covering a rebuild that is still in the works when it comes to the Chicago Bulls, trying to refine themselves and build around Josh Giddey, has your definition of what a real contender looks like changed?
No, because I don't think it looks any one way. I think if the bar is the Thunder, there are many teams who will now be contenders for years to come and who will miss that bar. I still think contenders come in different shapes and sizes, and frankly, God forbid, like, somebody on the Thunder gets injured of relevance, like, that is someone's path to taking contention and making it a championship. I don't think looking at how dominant the Thunder is has changed my definition of what a contender looks like, because they have raised the bar. I mean, this is probably what a dynasty looks like. So contender, like, pales in comparison to that. Like, Houston is a contender probably to me. The West has a few of those, like Denver is still a contender to me. Probably if things swung their way in a playoff series, like, they probably could beat OKC in the Game 7. They came close last year before OKC gained the confidence and AG went down. You know, there's all these different caveats that happen in a playoff series. But no, my definition of a contender hasn't changed. But I do have a closer than ever definition of probably a dynasty, or at least what the ingredients are. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think I'm comfortable in saying that.
That kind of ties into this last question. When you look across the league, do you believe that this Cavs group has a championship ceiling with the roster that's currently constructed, or does the Larry O'Brien trophy feel like it's going to stay out west for a little while longer when it comes to the OKC Thunder just running this gauntlet of being a dynasty?
Yeah, as it's currently constructed, no, the Cavs are not a contender to me. That being said, could this core, if Donovan Mitchell is playing, A1 playoff ball, Evan Mobley becomes a 92 overall, Darius Garland plays like he has in the past, Jared Allen is the perfect complementary big and plays aggressively. With that core in sync, do I think they could get to a conference finals or really push a East run? Sure. But as currently constructed, are they a real contender for the championship? Even if OKC is removed from the mix? Probably not. I don't think this Cavs team as constructed would beat Denver in a playoff series. I don't think they beat Houston in a playoff series, which I know people are like, oh, well, Houston just got assembled, whatever. Houston's pretty damn good, man. So, no, and it like, New York is definitively better than them. Not just right now, like, the way their team is built, dude. I love this Knicks team. And they're getting the most out of some guys, like, historically, I mean, under Tibbs, and this is not to speak to, like, all the difference in Mike Brown and Tibbs, but, like, historically, Tibbs is a tight rotation guy. I don't know that Mike Brown is suddenly, like, lengthened the rotation, but he's getting stuff out of a guy like Tyler Kolek, who, you remember, Jimmy, when we were in Nebraska, Tyler Kolek ran the Big East, dude. I didn't think he was going to be a real impactful NBA player, but he's just a winning player. That mold is, like, actually kind of making some waves in the NBA. Look at Colin Gillespie. Like, he was around at that time. So the way that the Knicks are getting stuff out of guys like Deuce McBride when he comes back, a guy like Tyler Kolek, I think Cleveland could be better in that and getting stuff out of guys deeper on the bench. I mean, that's what you have to do to widen this margin of error. So as they're constructed, could they make a conference finals push? Sure. I think that's more of an indictment on the top of the East. But even, like, I'm forgetting Detroit. Detroit's better than them right now. And Detroit, I think, has made a leap. Like, I think they got invaluable experience in their Knicks series last year. They do double bigs, and they do it well. Cade Cunningham could probably – this might be a hot take. Cade Cunningham could probably rise to the level – I don't even think this is crazy to say – could probably rise to the level of Donovan Mitchell in a playoff series. Like, that's not crazy to say.
I agree.
They're getting stuff, and they have a real – like, you want to talk about identity and culture. The dude that left Cleveland a few years ago has built a real culture in Detroit, reminiscent of the stuff that people have always loved historically about Detroit basketball. That stuff matters, man, having something to lean on, going back to our earlier question. So I like what Detroit's built. So could some lucky breaks swing Cleveland's way and see them end up in a conference finals? Possibly. I think it would be an indictment on the East and not just the teams across the board, but the top of the East. It would mean that the Knicks or the Pistons probably fell short before then. But sure, there's like it's not an odd chance. Like, I think it's possible, but overall contender by our definition now, definitely a couple tiers below the Thunder and a tier, maybe even a tier or two below Denver, Houston, and so on. So
it's sobering to hear that, I think, for our listeners, right? But I think that's important perspective. We are in this Cavs bubble where this is how we started the season. We started the season thinking the Cavs should at least get the 1 seed. And from that position, the East seemed a lot weaker across the board.
Yeah.
Yes. East seemed a lot weaker across the board. They should cakewalk to the conference finals. And then it's them and the Knicks, and we'll see what lessons they learn along the way in the playoffs. And if you get to the finals, who knows? J-Dub, hurts his thumb again, and the Thunder have some injuries. Like, obviously, you're rooting for bad luck on the other side at that point, but you know what you're going into. But the finals would have been a huge step. Now it's like, what are you really aiming for, and what does it take to get there? We're talking about, and I agree with this. I've been saying this for a couple weeks now. My calculus is completely changed. I'm not sure they could win the East anymore. The conference finals question, I would like to see Detroit prove a little bit more in the playoffs, but that's totally fair.
It's fair. Yeah.
It's totally fair to say that Detroit is better. It's actually objectively true by any metric that the Detroit Pistons are better than them right now. And for the Cade Cunningham, Donovan Mitchell, I know Donovan Mitchell's a superhero around here, but, like, what's my favorite catchphrase around here? Basketball's for tall people. Basketball's for tall people. Cade Cunningham's tall. Donovan Mitchell's not tall. Just how it works. If the Cavs get this version of Evan Mobley that to this point doesn't exist, if the Cavs get this version of Donovan Mitchell that, frankly, the way Donovan Mitchell's playing right now, having to shoot 30 shots every other day, it's not helping them get there. If that happens, if they get this version of Darius Garland, that has never existed in the playoffs. And by the way, his toe injury, I'm starting to think that's a feature, not a bug. Have we considered that fact? He's back now. Kenny's saying after every game, oh, he has nice stretches. And they need Darius Garland to be what he was last season, plus to get where they need to go. So these are all ifs that need to happen. And we're saying that these ifs apply to conference finals runs now. If Jared Allen plays aggressively for longer than 8 straight basketball minutes, which we don't see very often around here, okay? This is where we are. This is where the Cavs are. The championship are, literally forget about it right now. The Thunder are in a different universe. And I agree with Joel that Denver is a slight notch below. And then Houston, again, I'm still not ready to give up on the playoff ideal that, like, can we get some shooting on the court to win in the playoffs? And I don't know about Houston in a half court side. I know the offense, the shooting is the offensive rebounds, right?
It's revolutionary, man, and it works in the playoffs. They did it against Golden State without KD,
and they lost.
It was a game 7. They didn't have a shot maker like KD back then.
I get it.
And every great team, they played them close this year.
I love Houston. I love watching them play. They are revolutionary. It's gonna be fun. But I'm just saying, when we have big picture conversations about the Cavs and who should stay, who should go, what's the bar to clear? The bar has been raised. I think that's the big picture takeaway from this cup. The bar has been raised. So if you're really being serious about trying to win a championship and not just trying to sell progress, incremental progress, like frankly the Cavs have been doing after the most 2 recent playoff exits, then you're going to have to make some hard decisions around here.
I think the scary part for Cleveland right now is that the bar has not only been raised on the other side of the bracket, which was always probably a looming possibility. And like, maybe I'm a little high on Detroit here. Like, dude, Cade Cunningham is 24 and an all-NBA player. And maybe I'm overrating that playoff series, but I think the experience is invaluable. I mean, this is a guy who's now been forged by playing the Knicks close, nearly forcing a game 7. And what, they lose 28 straight games like 2 years ago? Like, the experience this dude has now, the drive he has, these are intangibles, I know. But they matter. And you give a guy this experience, and he's still only 24 with that experience, and you give him the right team around him, you give him hard-nosed defenders, line of versatility. I think they could probably use a better secondary guy next to him. I love the progress Jalen Duren's making as a role partner, but if you give him, if he ever gets a remotely high-profile secondary ball handler, the East better look out, bro. And I think right now they should have people on their toes. So maybe I'm a little high on them, but it's the scary part, to add to your point, is that the bar has been raised in their own conference, which was not supposed to be a thing.
Hey, Joel, you're not alone. I was high on Detroit coming into the season, and I was getting some weird faces on this podcast. So it's not just you, my boy. It's not just
from Jimmy. Weird faces from Jimmy.
I major in weird faces. I mean, let's see some. My shooting question applies to them as well.
Yeah, and you have a perpetual weird face, so
we can all agree that the Oklahoma City Thunder are the running favorites for the NBA championship, to be the first team to go back-to-back since the 2017 and the 2018 Golden State Warriors, and the rest of the NBA is just playing for second. Is that what we're agreeing on this podcast?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think they need our opinion for that to be the consensus. So
how about they're going to break the wins record? They're going to threaten the playoff record. We're in faux range with this team. That's how good they are. I think they could win a title with losing one of their core pieces, as long as it's not Shea.
How many wins this season in?
I'll go 75.
75. I'm a little worried about it just because I think they care about it if it's in range, but I don't think they're necessarily going to chase it. Now, they might not have to chase it to break it. Like I said earlier, Brandon Carlson could come in and break the record, depending on who they're playing. But I worry about how much. I mean, this is such a basketball viewership thing to worry about. They don't care, but I just worry about them brushing up with the record and saying, oh, well, we're going to rest guys because we prioritize the playoffs and going back to back. Now, the playoff record is actually interesting because I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll at least get nudged by a team or two, especially in the West. But then they'll end up winning again.
We'll see. I think for the regular season record, they roll out of bed and dust most of these dudes. So who's playing, who doesn't play, I'm not really that concerned about it, honestly. In the playoffs, I mean, we're saying, oh boy, all these other teams are rooting for the Thunder to have an injury. Well, what if Denver or Houston loses a dude? What if Kevin Durant, a very old basketball player who has a recent injury history that is pretty long, what if he gets hurt? The Houston Rockets are a completely different team, and they don't look the same. Like that is a two-way street.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, I think the best way to end would to circle back to a final conclusion about the Cavs. The Cavs last year, 64 wins, did not break the 66 win record. 15-0. They were trying immensely hard to break that streak for the Cavs to start the season. And then the end of their season ended how it did.
The x-rays on those Cavs found 0 dogs inside, by the way. 0 dogs. They came back negative for dog. On the Oklahoma City Thunder, they found an abundance of dogs on those x-rays.
I think that's indicative of what Joel was saying, is that the Thunder, while they may not have to try, they're not focused on that. They're focused on the bigger picture. They're focused on winning a championship. And I think while we cannot even talk about the Cavs winning a championship at this point in the season, I think that's the difference with those two teams, is the thought process, the hunger, and yes, Jimmy, the dog of the mentality of the players on the roster.
Woof, woof, boys. Are we doing a group interview? We are going to bark at the end of this?
No.
Thank you, Joel, for joining us. That was an extremely insightful episode, and we will look to have you back on later into the season, but it won't be the playoffs because we know Chicago's not going to make it that far.
Who's to say I'll be on Chicago come playoffs?
Hey. Then we're talking about the Cavs not being there. With all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. Sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.